And we're back for another week. No MotoGP.
Nope.
But we had a really fun day yesterday. We did our second track day of the year, and it was perfect weather.
Yeah, who needs MotoGP? Let's just go ride bikes.
I know, right? Like, it's one thing to watch golf. It's another thing to go play golf.
Yeah.
So, it was a great day.
It was, I can tell how good of a day it was this morning when I woke up and my hands are sore, my legs are tired.
My back is sore. My hip flexors are tired.
I rode a bunch yesterday, and usually at the track days, we'll ride quite a bit, but it was absolutely perfect weather all day. So it was hard to turn down a session yesterday.
Yeah, we're prima donnas. So if it's a cold day, we'll wait till it warms up. And if it's a hot day, we'll only ride in the morning because we're special that way. But it was perfect. It was perfect all day. We got a little bit of wind in the middle. And
I'll take it.
And maybe let's just maybe hit this really quick because it seems like our audience, you out there in podcast land, really like when we talk about riding tip stuff. And since it was really windy yesterday, this comes up a lot. How do you handle wind on a motorcycle? Because we were on fully faired bikes going very, very fast, and it gets extremely windy out there.
Yeah, so there's on a street, I'll let you answer the street side of this, but on a track, you definitely have to pay attention to which direction the wind is coming from and kind of account for it. So the wind yesterday, the way our track is set up, the front straight is heading basically due west. And the wind was coming out of the southeast, essentially. So it was mostly pushing you down the front straight, but a little bit of a crosswind as well. One of the considerations that maybe surprises people is if you're riding in a situation where you have a lot of crosswind, at least on the track, you will overheat sometimes.
Right.
Your bike will. What I assume is happening is the air's kind of peeling across the bike sideways, is basically creating kind of a dead pocket of air on the insides of the fairing, and it's not letting the air come through the radiator as efficiently. So my bike wasn't overheating, but it was definitely running hotter than it should have, given it was like a 71 degree day. It was beautiful out. So it was running a little warmer than it should have, but I think that was the crosswind. But if the wind is consistent, you just kind of have to plan for it and adjust for it. So for example, if it's blowing you into, down the front straightaway when you're coming into turn one, you're probably gonna have to brake a little bit sooner.
Well, and I think that's where most people get caught out on the track is when the wind is pushing them down the straightaway and they find they're going 10, 15 miles an hour faster than they normally do. And then we see a lot of people overcooking into their turn one.
And it's usually a much bigger problem when you have changing conditions. So if the wind is a steady 20 miles an hour all day solid, usually you get used to it. But that's never the case in my experience. It's almost always, depending on the session, because you go out once an hour, it's going to change hour by hour. So you have to kind of, reset and adjust for that every time you go out. So if it's pushing you down a straight, you got to brake probably a little earlier, and just don't expect to have the same sort of support when you sit up to brake.
That's what always floors me, right? Like we're used to popping up.
Yeah.
And then you hit that wind blast, but when there's a tailwind, it's like a little calmer.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, you don't get that same sort of resistance feeling. But then at the same time, what it ends up doing is as you're going through, we have a fast section on the track that we were on. It's turns 3 and 4. It's a really fast sweeping left-hander. But as you're going through it, the wind was kind of pushing under you, essentially. So it kind of makes the bike feel light and floaty.
And it pushes you away from the apex. Yeah.
But on the exit, as you're trying to accelerate out of the corner, the bike just kind of dances and squirms, and it is not stable at all on the way out. So you have to kind of account for these things.
And then to add fun to that, there's a big dirt pile. So typically as that wind is coming across that back section, which is the fastest section of our track, the back straightaway, it gets a thin layer of grime over the track. Sometimes you can even see it coming off the tires of other bikes.
Yep.
And this is a big reason why I will not, and I don't on any motorcycle I own, put in a free flow air filter. I still run the paper OEM stock air filter because we get so much dust on our track.
Yeah, you do. You're definitely in there. That section of our track. What's funny is further away from like on the outside of that back straight, on the outside of turn 4 and 5, there's a small motocross track.
Yeah.
And in Utah, it's just sand mostly, right? It's very light. So any amount of like traction or traffic on that track, and we just get this cloud of dust coming over the track. So
yeah, it's like, and it gets over everything.
Yeah.
And so there is, people worry about grip.
Yep.
I don't feel like, maybe you have, I've never felt like the sand across the track, unless it's really extreme, it was anything I ever really noticed, unless it's like a super, super windy.
Yeah, a little bit, but it's minor typically. It's the wind is usually more of an effect,
right?
On, like how the track
pushing
feels.
you around. Like you go into one turn and it's pushing you like off the track. There's one section when we run the full track, we go through a corner called Witchcraft, where you connect the west and the east track, and you come around and up the hill. And if the wind's really strong, where you want to apex that corner, there's no rumble strip, and the wind will push you right off the track. And where there's no rumble strip, there's no margin.
Yeah.
And it's really, really unnerving. If you're not prepared for it, you're going fast and the wind just kind of pushes you where you don't want to be.
Yeah. So it definitely messes with you. I will say lighter riders are way more affected by it. My nephew was out. He's got his little Ovale GP7.
Yeah, he's
100 pounds.
Yeah, maybe.
That bike is, I don't know, less than 200. I don't know what it weighs. It's not very heavy though. But if you look at the side profile of the bike, it is smaller than a full-size bike, but not that much smaller. So he really gets pushed around quite a bit, I think, in the wind. My wife was out there. She rides an RS660. She's also very small. So smaller riders tend to get way more affected by the wind than bigger riders on bigger bikes, which makes sense. But they both talked about, I think my tires are going off. I think I'm like, my grips, these tires are wearing out. And I looked at the tires at one point. I was like, I don't think the tires are that bad. I think it's just windy, and it makes everything feel vague and not as planted as you want. So these are all just the kind of the track considerations for wind anyway.
And the best way to really combat it, there's a lot of anxiety, especially with newer riders. How do I ride in the wind, kind of a thing. And you have to be, the best way I know to deal with it is more counter steering inputs, right? You have to be giving it constant steering inputs to make sure you stay on path. And so you can't, what's really funny is people get really nervous or stressed about the wind, so they hold on really tight. And then now the wind is pushing them as much as the motorcycle. So as it's pushing their body, it's increasing the steering inputs into the handlebar. So it makes the bike feel even more wandery and vague. So like you're trying to hold it still and you get stiff and tight, and it just exacerbates the whole thing that you hate feeling anyway. So a lot of it is really, you have to be prepared for it. If it's windy, realize it's going to be windy and make adjustments to your riding. Really focus on being relaxed with your upper body, and be mindful that you may have to put in a few more steering inputs to keep the bike going where you want it to go, because it is going to want to wander and drift, right? Like we're going through a corner and the wind's coming underneath us on our fully faired bike like a wing. It's pushing the bike up. There's a lot of surface area. It feels different,
The way you're describing it on the road, it kind of reminds me. So we have the car, right? But I also have a Sprinter van, and it's it's the high roof, extended long Sprinter van. It sounds like the difference is when I'm driving the car on the highway, it's very little effort. I'm not thinking a whole lot about it. It doesn't take much. If I'm driving the Sprinter van, especially if I'm going someplace that's got a lot of wind on the highway, I am very actively driving the Sprinter van. There's constant little inputs. You'd think driving an automatic vehicle down the road shouldn't be very exhausting or taxing, but you try to drive in the wind for a long time, it does kind of wear you out. And I'm, on the motorcycle, it's 10x that, right? Because you're out in the elements too. So just be mindful of the kind of the fatigue it probably sets in as
right.
well.
That's a good point, the fatigue. It's funny to me that when I was new, I remember being really freaked out about riding in the wind and being really stressed and anxious. And now even yesterday, I only notice it if it's pretty extreme. Like most winds, I don't even register it anymore. And I think that's a testament to when you stay relaxed And when you focus on like where you're going and really kind of keep your mindfulness on what you're trying to do, a lot of the wind doesn't have as much of an effect as you think it does. It's a lot of times our reaction to it, our overreaction to it makes it worse. And of course, we're talking more moderate winds, not these, we're out here in the West, they'll shut down freeways because the wind will be so extreme it knocks semi-trucks over.
Yeah, trucks will flip.
So if it's that windy, find a safe spot. You don't have to ride in it. That's one thing like motorcycling as a whole. I feel like there's a sect or a demographic of riders who look at riding through adverse conditions as like a badge of honor, right? Like you need to go ride in the rain. You need to go ride in the cold. You got to go ride when it like even ride in the snow. And I am so not into that. To me, like the risk of riding is high enough.
Yeah.
If I can avoid riding in really crap conditions, if I don't have to, I'm going to avoid riding in really crap conditions and wait for a better day because who cares?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely times, especially on a trip, when you get caught in weather and you don't have a whole lot of choice. There's not really anywhere to pull over and stop exactly.
You got to get to the next place.
You just got to get through it, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, given the choice, motorcycling is a choice, right? If none of us, at least in the United States, none of us are riding a bike because we absolutely have no options, right? We chose to have a bike. We chose to go on this ride. So yeah, I'm with you. I am very much like a fair weather rider. If the conditions are abhorrent and just it's going to be miserable, why go? It's
Well, riding in the rain makes your bike just filthy, and I can't stand that. But the other thing, like a couple of years ago, we rode to Sturgis, like a group of like 6 of us, and most of us had work. And we had to get back the next day or whatever. We had to get back by the Monday, and so crossing Wyoming back, it was a massive rainstorm, huge, like toad floating, soggy, pushing wakes down the freeway. And if you've crossed Wyoming, there's not a whole lot between here and there. Yeah. So like we were just trying to get to the town of 10 Sleep. That's actually the name of the town because the Indians, it was 10 sleeps to get somewhere. So that's why it's called that. But we were trying to get from Gillette to 10 Sleep, and 10 Sleep was just the next hotel. And it took all freaking day. Every bit of wet riding gear was soaked through. Yep. Even like the Gore-Tex Pro stuff couldn't handle that rain. Yeah. And you're like, you just could not wait to get off the motorcycle. And there's people who like go seek it out and they're like, oh, there's no such thing as bad weather, just bad gear. And I'm like, nah, like I couldn't see. I was cold. My hands hurt,
Well, and to each his own.
Yeah, right.
They're like, sometimes some people it's the adventure of the ride is what they're in for. And power to you. If that's your deal, go for it.
I think that's a good way to look at it, right? Like if it's something you love, I'm not going to criticize you. Yeah. But I also don't like criticizing those who hate riding in crappy weather as being like less of a rider because they don't want to ride in crap weather. Yeah. Like it goes both ways, right?
Well, and I think to your point, the sort of like rite of passage mentality. It's like, oh, well, I had to suffer, so you should have to suffer.
Yeah, the gatekeeping, right? I had to be miserable, so you need to be miserable. Back in my day, we didn't even have wet weather riding gear. We just rode in soggy leather, and by gosh, we liked it. We didn't have we had paper maps, and when it rained, the maps got wet and ran, and you couldn't even read them. And we still, and you're like, okay, cool. Like that world's gone, man.
Yeah, well... It's good. We got our old man rant out of the way in the first couple minutes of the episode, so that's good.
It's good. Yeah, it's good. Well, I guess my rant is let people ride the way they want to ride. Yeah, for sure. Is really what it comes down to, and don't feel pressure to ride in crap weather. There was someone was advocating the only way to improve as a rider is to ride in crap weather, and I'm like, no, I mean, there's ways to improve riding in a low grip environment, but you don't have to do it when it's wet and muddy and sucky.
You don't have to just go suffer. Yeah. But speaking of which, we oftentimes talk about this of bad weather. If we have bad weather at a track day, there are no crashes or very, very few.
I know, it's so funny. Like we talked about it today. Yeah. It was our first weekend doing Apex Plus, which we're pretty excited about. We had our educational component with Apex Days. I thought it went really great, but because it was a warm day, we had a surprising number of crashes. And it's like,
And maybe the unfortunate part is it's almost not surprising because it was a nice warm day.
It's one of our jokes, right? Like when it's a warm, perfect day, I usually, in the writers' meeting, I'll make the joke that like weather's perfect, that conditions are ideal for us to have a ton of crashes.
Yep.
Because I think when there's a little healthy level of distrust of grip, people like pay a little bit more attention to what's going on. They're a little bit more mindful of their first and last 5%.
Unfortunately, we saw the crash truck come back quite a bit. Luckily, I don't think I saw any real injuries.
Yeah, I don't think anybody even went to the medical center.
Yeah, but definitely some falls, which I guess to that end, if you're not a track rider, I think it can sound, maybe we sound harsh or kind of cavalier about the falls that happen at the track, but the reality is almost never does anybody get hurt. It can happen for sure. It is a crash, but most of the time it's a little fall and you slide to a stop and you get up and then you're just pissed off that you crashed your bike.
Right. Yeah. The typical damage is like, I did see some damage yesterday that made me very sad. Someone slid, hit another rider. The other rider didn't fall, but the guy who did fall, his handlebar put a dent in his tank, and it was that really pretty SRX 800, 900, that Yamaha one with the white retro, and it has that Marlboro red check on it, and it put a dent there in his tank. And he was like, and he's like, I just bought a track bike. It's going to be here Wednesday. I just rode this on the track because my track bike wasn't here. He was heartbroken. But like, that was kind of like an odd.
That's usually a weird one.
It's a really weird one. Like we do this all the time. Typically, it's a low slide.
Yep.
Right? They lose grip from the front tire typically because an underloaded front tire is very common. They slide into the gravel. They might break a shift lever, break a lever, and just scratches on the side. It's usually pretty minor.
One of the interesting things too, and again, this is because we're out here so much, we see all this stuff all the time. If you go watch crash videos from places like, and I'm not trying to badmouth these other tracks, but if you think about places like Barber or Road Atlanta or places where the runoff is very grassy, because it rains there all the time, right? They can grow grass very easily. We are in the desert. When you go off, it is just some dirt and dust and sand. It's very soft.
Yeah.
We rarely have bikes flip if they slide. Whereas a lot of times, if you look at these places like Barber and so forth, if that bike slides off, not typically, but oftentimes something, a foot peg, a handlebar, whatever, will dig into the grass and then cause a flip. And then you have real damage to the bike.
Then you have the bike tumbling. Yeah, we are kind of lucky there. That's a good point. I don't think I'd even really formalize that thought. But yeah, it's rare to see a bike that comes back damaged on both sides.
It's almost always just a low side. The bike slides to a stop and both you get up and you pick the bike up. And a lot of times our riders, even if they do have a fall, they get up and they're riding by the end of the day again.
Oh yeah. It's rare they're not. Usually it's like, I broke my shift lever and I can't find a solution. And there's usually always a solution. Or somebody has spares.
Yeah.
And then like for conflict, like between riders, like the one situation I was telling you where the guy got the dent in his tank, he didn't even fall down. He got a dent in his tank from the other guy. But a lot of our rules at the track day, our etiquette and the guidance is built around minimizing bike-to-bike conflict, right? How you get on the track is very specific. How you stay to this side of the track for this amount of distance so you can blend in.
Yep.
Bike-to-bike crashes are exceedingly rare.
Well, and that's also a function of our track too, I would say. We have a very modern track layout.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Right. It's extremely wide. The corners are set up and the visibility is very good. There's very few times when two bikes are suddenly coming together, unexpectedly. Oftentimes, like another rider touching another rider is extremely rare for us. It can happen if someone just flat out makes a mistake, but it's not very common. But a lot of that is the layout too. Our track doesn't really encourage that type of thing to happen. So, which helps. It's a better experience.
I actually did have a semi-close call with another rider. And it was in C group, and it was a newer rider. Mm-hmm. And I think this is worth talking about because if you go do a track day, this is a thing you should never do. And the rider who did it to me, we went and had a good talk about it because there was ultimately no harm, no foul. And he didn't even really realize why what he was doing was so bad until we had the conversation. Then he was like, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize. I am so sorry. Thank you. I will never do that again. And what he was doing, and we see this all the time, not all the time, but we see it more in the newer track day groups, is he was weaving across the track to like get through traffic. He was getting frustrated with the slower rider, and he would squirt to the other side and squirt to the other side, or he's like, oh, I need to enter wide, and he would squirt, hurry over. So he's doing these kind of sweepy weaving things.
Yep.
And here come I going 30, 40 miles an hour faster on a very steady line, and he had no idea what was coming up behind him, and he swooped over
right in front
of me. Right. And it was close. It was a pretty close one because I had so much speed on him. And he's like, oh my gosh, that scared the crap out of me. And then I kind of like waved. And he's like, oh, apparently I did something wrong. And so he came and found me, and I was like, yeah, let's talk about that, because let's talk about why that's so bad. And he's like, huh. And I was like, yeah, you have to be, even though we make the joke, don't ride around looking behind you. Like we don't want people looking behind you because you weave it as well. You're not going to flow a steady line. You have to be aware that there are likely going to be people coming up from behind.
Right.
There's going to be faster riders who are going to be moving through. Yeah. And it's nice to get used to that.
Yeah, we had, it's funny you bring up the lines part. So I think it'd be interesting to talk about some of the feedback that, I had several riders come up. This happens at most track days, but it seemed like yesterday there was a lot. I had several riders come up asking questions and tips and ideas and stuff. I think I had 2 different people come up. I followed them on track a bit, and they knew I was behind them, and so they came and chatted later to say, "Well, what did you see? How can I get better? Or what do you suggest?" A really common thing. And we talked about this, and I think this will lead into the Apex Plus I want to talk about. I had people that weren't being kind of disciplined. Both of these riders weren't being disciplined with keeping their entrance wide. So, and what I mean by that is, imagine you're coming down a straightaway and there's a tight corner coming up, a little more than 90-degree corner coming up. What you want to try to think about is staying, if it's a left-hander, if you want to try to stay to the right edge of the track as much as you can for as kind of long as you can until you get to your actual tip-in point.
Yeah, your outside, inside, outside path of travel that you would see like in the textbooks.
Yeah, so if you think about this, if you're coming on a straightaway to a left-hand corner, you want to stay to the right edge of the track. You're going to get to your brake marker where you start applying brakes, and then you're going to get into some sort of tip-in point. And you want to stay wide until you get to the tip-in point, and that's when you initiate your actual leaning and your turning. But what often happens is the rider gets a little bit nervous and a little bit, I don't want to say panicked, but they're
No,
nervous.
I think nervous is exactly the right term, because they want to start their turning sooner.
And your eyes will focus on the apex too soon sometimes. And so you start braking and immediately you see that apex coming and you just start drifting to it. And I watch both of these riders start braking and then drift with the bike basically upright about halfway across the track.
Oh, halfway?
Nearly mid-track, and then tip in for the corner because they're just so focused on the apex. But by the time you've done that, now you've actually made this corner radius much tighter.
Right, exactly.
So you now have to go much slower, or if you are going to stay in the same line with the same speed, you're going to end up shooting really wide in the middle of the corner to finish your turn.
Yeah.
So both of these riders, the advice was, hey, be patient, stay to the outside, get your braking done. When you get to your tip-in point, that's when you initiate your turn. You're still trail braking, but stay disciplined and stay to that outside until you get there. And suddenly you can keep this nice, pretty arc.
And you have to lean less. You can carry more speed, less lean, less risk.
Yeah.
What's funny about you bringing this up on the track is that's very, very common on the street. And you see that with a lot of riders who end up crowding or sometimes even crossing the center line, depending on if they're in the UK or here, as they go into a corner, as they tip in a little too soon. And now they're crowding that center line, and maybe their tires are still on the correct side of the center line, but now their body mass isn't. And if they're a little more disciplined, you stay wide a little longer. You get more visibility, right? Depending on the turn or what the terrain might be.
Right.
But it does increase the size of the circle,
right,
for lack of a better term. And it gives you more options, right? Because you're not leaning as much. See, all the things you can learn from a track day.
Well, and we talked about this on the last one, but the track is the lab.
Yeah,
right?
it's our scientific evidence, right?
And I know from the comments, I know that there are street riders who listen to the podcast who, when the track stuff comes up, they're sort of like, oh God, here they go again, talking about the track. I would encourage you to stick with it and just listen if you can get through it. Even if you're not a track rider and have no interest in being a track rider, a lot of the ideas and concepts, they're the same.
They are so the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even like, I'll say that to like, if you're listening and maybe, you ride a cruiser or a bike and like the track really isn't your jam. Like you want to become a better rider, but you're not really interested in going fast. That's totally fair. Everybody rides for different reasons, right? We were just making that our old man grumbling kind of a thing. But no matter what kind of bike you have, there are educational opportunities that exist for you, and you can take you can do a track day on any motorcycle. We had a Diavel out there yesterday, right? And Diavels have terrible cornering clearance, right?
Yeah.
They drag constantly, and he had the sideways license plate that was hanging way off the side, and I think the corner of it was like chamfered off by the end of the day because he was leaning so much. But like he was having an incredibly good time, right? Because, you can work on and practice all these things, right? Like think about your favorite canyon road or your favorite twisty road. If you're lucky, you're going to see that favorite road maybe 30 times this summer. If you're lucky, you're going to ride that road 30 times this summer.
30 times is a lot in a summer.
Right.
Yeah.
But we probably saw turn 1 30 times yesterday.
Oh, easily. Yeah, I did way more than 30 laps.
You did way more than 30 laps, right? So think about the opportunity that gives you to experiment, right? It's the lab. We can experiment. We can try things. We can see what works. We can play with our controls in it's not necessarily a controlled environment, but being a closed course, there's fewer variables that you have to account for that allows you to really perfect your craft in a really nice way, in a nice place with a lot of people around who are very happy and eager to help you improve, right?
That is one of my favorite things about track days is actually the people.
Oh yeah.
The amount of conversation. There are so many people at the track that I talk to every track day. Everyone's so friendly and everyone's having a good time because we're all kind of at our happy place, essentially, right?
You're with people who like perfecting their craft. I'm going to cling to that phrase because I really like it.
Yeah.
We had a couple new riders come yesterday, and one of them expressed to me how nervous they were about showing up around people who are at this very high level of proficiency, and would they laugh at their lack of proficiency? Would they look at this guy, he's terrible, or he has no skill? And it is not like that at all. Because if you show up and you want to get better, everybody is going to do whatever they can to help you get better, even to the point of giving you parts. If
and I do want to say that this is not a Utah phenomenon. It's
a motorcycle phenomenon.
Yeah, every track day location is kind of like this. Now, some folks are taking it really serious, especially if that track day is sort of race prep.
Right, because people might be getting ready for a race weekend.
But really, even then, those folks they understand that not everyone's here to go racing like they are. And they're usually very open, very happy to share and just talk shop. And anyway, I can't say enough. It was just such a positive experience yesterday, just chatting with everybody.
Right.
Even off the track, it was good.
Well, and I'm even going to push it to the next level. I'm lucky enough to go hang out with a lot of at these media events, right? And if you think it's exclusive to just a bunch of club local guys that all know each other, no, I'll show up and I may not know any of these media people that you know and you've seen on YouTube, and they are the exact same way. I watched Ari Henning help another journalist figure out a suspension setting on their personal bike that was there for whatever reason. And it was the same kind of camaraderie and try this through this turn, or encouragement, It's crazy, you would think, all these different media outlets would be competitors, but when we're all on motorcycles, we're just all riders and we're all there experiencing the same thing. It's awesome.
Yeah.
It's not what I thought it was going to be before I got into it. It's way better than I'd hoped. And it's just consistent about the motorcycle community.
Speaking of that, tell me about Apex Plus. How did the first Apex Plus go?
I thought it went great. We didn't have a ton of participants because It was the first one.
Yeah,
it was like a
fine.
soft launch, more or less. It was really great. How we tried to structure it is I don't like doing lead follow inside of track days. I don't remember if we talked about this last podcast or not.
We can
but
share it, yeah.
But when you try to do lead follow types of instruction within a track day environment, it's really, really hard because if I'm trying to lead, then I'm trying to navigate either we're trying to pass other riders or we're trying to stay out of the way of other riders. And so we're not exactly flowing that perfect line everywhere, right? And then as far as the student, it's either they are trying to impress me or they're nervous about me watching them or they're trying to keep up with me. And I don't necessarily see that as an ideal situation to improve. It's one thing if you're in a classroom setting or a school setting, like with Yamaha Champ School, for example, right? It's 3 students per 1 instructor. You're with the 3 of you guys together. It's very structured. So the lead follow makes a lot more sense. And even with the lead follow, because there's 3, you're kind of jumping around. So you're not immediately in proximity with the instructor. So the pressure goes off when you're in third position, right?
And with the lead follow thing, also the difference of doing it at a formal school versus a track day. At a track day, some of the folks are there for the school and the instructor's there for the school. And some of the folks are just there to go ride.
Exactly.
And there's no sort of understood etiquette of what's supposed to happen during an active track day, right? In terms of, stay to the left so we can pass on the right. None of that.
Right. When we do some of our schools, right, the advanced rider training program, I'll take my little ducklings, my 3 students, and I may move to the left or to the right of the straightaway to allow another group of students who might be slower or faster to move through. Yeah. Right. So all the instructors are acutely aware what's going on, and we're managing our students in combination with all the other students who are out there. And you end up with a very positive experience. Yeah. With a track day, you can't do that. You know?
It doesn't really work to try to do lead follow in an active track day session with non-school participants. Is my opinion. So I'm glad that Apex Plus isn't trying to do that, because I just don't think it doesn't. I don't think it works very well, but I also think it kind of diminishes the paying rider's track day experience.
Right. And I don't think the person who's paying for the education is getting the best information, right? It's not as helpful as everybody wants. Show me the line, right? Everybody, and we get it all the time. Will you come out and ride with me and show me the line? And I know. So we talk about the line a lot because the line is the safest, fastest way through a corner, right? Mm-hmm. Because if you're going to win a race, not only do you have to be fast, you have to not crash. So the line is, we're all looking for that fastest, safest line, right? So we all want to know that. But we got to be realistic here, is there's a lot of variables in that, and it's, to go out on a track day and try to show you the fastest, safest line or whatever. So a lot of times I say, and I don't know how accurate this is, but this is a little phrase, is that the line is past tense in a lot of ways, right? The line to a certain extent becomes a way for us to describe where we've been.
Right.
It's less of a planning tool. And you talked about this at the last podcast where it's like Pac-Man, where we're looking for points, because it's easier for me to place a point and then adjust the placement of that point than it is to try to find this perfect line.
The points idea actually played out. I literally thought about this on track yesterday, because we had just talked about the points idea on the last episode. Through many of the sessions, as you're passing riders, I have to adjust constantly where I am on track if I'm making a pass. If all I had was a line, if you deviate from your line, how do you get back on the line?
How do you find it again, right?
And when do you get back onto it? Whereas if it's points, I can say, okay, imagine turn 6. That's an easy spot to make passes in.
Okay, yeah, it's the hardest turn on our west track. Everybody struggles with it. It's one of my favorites because it is hard, but
it has a super late apex. It's
crazy,
almost a 180 corner.
Nobody apexes it late enough.
Yeah, the apex is at the very end of it. So you go out really deep, and it's kind of a V. I mean, that it's not really a V, but that's how you picture it. So my slowest point of the corner is way kind of out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, and it's hard to identify, right?
It's just a spot you kind of mentally picture it. But if you're making a pass, I can't go out there if I'm trying to go up if I'm going up the inside of somebody. I have to plan to take a tighter line to give them somewhere to be, but I still have to get back to my apex in the same spot. And I would argue that my goal anyway is that where I apex and at the angle I apex at, right, the angle of my bike on the ground when I hit that apex should be nearly the same regardless of where I actually got through the middle of the corner.
Mm-hmm.
So on my ideal line, if I can get out deep enough and get the bike slowed and turned, then I can hit that apex really straight with a ton of acceleration.
You'll accelerate hard past the apex.
Yeah. Whereas if I have to hug a tighter line or something because I'm going, inside of somebody else, I will have to slow so my mid corner speed is even lower, but it's so I can get the bike turned and still hit the apex how I want and get out of the corner safely. But if I had just a line to picture, I'd have a hard time thinking about how do I navigate that when I have to deviate from my line because of a pass or another rider or whatever else. So I think trying to picture points is a much more usable planning tool, like you said. So
yeah, and we, the apexes are beautiful, and sometimes we get too obsessed with apexes because your lap effectively resets at every apex, right? So say there is traffic, or you got to take that weird tighter line through turn 6. And you're like, I'm way off my line. I've never actually been on this part of the track. So you go slower and you kind of basically, for lack of a better term, you kind of botch that entire corner, but you still apex at the right spot.
Mm-hmm.
And so now that you've apexed at the right spot, now you're, again, for lack of a better term, you're back online.
Right. Yeah.
And off you go. And it makes you very adaptable as a rider. Mm-hmm. And if you're a street rider and you're listening to this and you think this doesn't apply to me as a street rider, oh my gosh, does it? It applies probably even more as a street rider because, I just took the black thing that is behind Brian right now, which we haven't
talked about this yet. We haven't addressed the literal elephant in the room.
But I took that up for a ride today. And not many of the canyons are open yet because we're still in spring weather. But there was a freaking dead moose in one of the corners, right? Okay, I know, sad. Like, I love moose. It was a juvenile moose. It made me very sad because I'm a softie. But if you think I can run my line, in that situation, there is no physical way for me to stay online in that situation. So I have to adjust. I have to adapt. But I could still. He wasn't on the apex. Once I was back to the apex, once I got my direction coming out of the corner, I was back at it again. I was able to perfect that skill set on a track far faster than I was able to figure that out as a street rider.
So with the Apex Plus, you talked about dealing with lines. What other stuff do you guys go over in this? Because it's classroom sessions.
It is kind of classroom sessions. So it's basically what I wanted to do when I built it is I didn't want to overwhelm a track day rider, right? If I have been to track days where they'll have like a mandatory educational thing, right? And it's just, oh my God, it's too much, right? Or it's not what I'm interested in, or like it's too pedantic. So what I wanted to build was I wanted to create an educational program that helps you get up to speed really quickly on the track in a way that's not overwhelming, but in a way that would also be really rewarding, that you're going to get big gains relatively quickly. Yeah. So it's only 3 classroom sessions for the first half of the day, and each one focuses on a very specific thing, which gives you something to work on for the next session. So it's not like I'm brand new to this track, I'm brand new to track riding, and I'm like, holy crap, there's so much, there's 13 corners I got to figure out. There's all these people who are going. Instead, we have, okay, first session, we want you to work on this, right? We work a lot on controls. Mm-hmm. For the first session, we have a whole big thing on how we're going to work with the controls and how to feel it and what we're feeling. And then the next time you come in, then we start talking about lines and path of travel and direction and getting direction out of corners, right? So that's what you work on for the next session. And then lunch, we do a posture thing, right? Because everybody wants to know how to sit on the motorcycle. And it was really fun with this one. where the light bulbs came on, and we've talked about this before too, that posture gets more attention than it really deserves. But when we were talking about lines and direction and how we dissect a corner and apexes and the points thing that we were just talking about, watching the light bulbs come on was so exciting, right? One of the students is from Hawaii, and he's like, we don't have a racetrack in Hawaii, so we would all go out at night and we'd ride this mountain road because, because Hawaii is perfect. And it was idyllic, right? Him telling the story. And, we're talking about how to dissect these corners and things like that. And he goes, oh my gosh. He goes, all the advice my buddies gave me was so wrong, And he came back after the next session. He goes, I have never felt so confident in a corner my whole life.
Good.
And then we started talking about posture, and the same thing came out. And he goes, oh my gosh, all the advice my buddies gave me was so wrong. And so we gave him some posture tips, and he's like, it's so much easier. It's so much less work. It's, he had a great day. He had a really outstanding day by being really receptive to some of those things and then being able to go out and apply it in like the perfect environment to go apply it. I was excited about it.
So I like the idea of one of the difficult things with coaching is you go, okay, I'm trying to get better at a thing. I'm going to pay for a full day of coaching. If I gave you another new thing to think about every hour for 8 hours,
you're gassed.
Like you've lost everything from the morning by the afternoon, probably, right?
Right.
It's much better to say, hey, let's kind of drip the ideas or give you fewer to focus on, or these couple things are going to make a difference. We'll worry about the rest when we get there. I like that approach because it's trying to just keep keep a newer rider going, hey, I am learning, I am progressing, I am thinking about things with the right lens of it, without overwhelming everybody. And that's the hard thing. I've had several folks who have gone through classes that are 2 or 3 day schools, and the schools I think are great, and they don't argue that the schools are great. It's just so much information.
Well, like you and I both done champ school, right? Like I don't feel like I got really a full picture of the value of champ school until it was like my 3rd time through. Because it's 2 days, right? It's intense, right? Yeah. So the other practical advantage that I thought we could do by doing Apex Plus this way is by only doing 3 small classroom sessions, they're only like 15, 20 minutes each, we can keep the price way lower.
Yeah, it's cheap.
It's cheap. It's crazy cheap.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going like I am because it's me. I went out with my students each session, right?
Sure, of course you did.
And I wasn't coaching them actively, but I did look at them. Yeah. I did see them, right? Like I did look for them and pay attention to them. But because I'm not actively, I can still do my other responsibilities out there. We can keep the price way lower. And it gives you something to work on, and it's going to give you something that you're going to take with you into your street riding.
Yeah.
I'm very sensitive to that. I don't know if you feel this way. I get really irritated when I go do a school and all they do is they teach me the track. And you're like, that's cool. I don't ride here, man.
I'll never be here again.
Right? Yeah. I did one. What's the track in Colorado? High Plains Raceway?
High Plains, yep.
Oh my gosh. I did a school there, and all they did is they taught me every nuance and subtlety of that track.
There's a bump here, you tip in after.
Yeah, and you go past the little grass route, and then and I'm like, seriously, there was like, I've never been there since. Yeah. So all like that whole education, I remember one of the instructors said to me, he's like, well, you just got to like look through that little bush there, and that's where you got to go. And I'm like, how is this valuable
to me here? Yeah.
in any other context? Yeah. And I didn't want to do that.
Yep.
Right? I didn't want to do that to someone because, someone drives up from Boise or down from Vegas. I did that backwards.
Everyone's on the map like, how did it go?
How did he get there? Like how they may not ever come back to this track, or they may only ride this track once a year. What good does it do me is like, go around this little seam, and then there's this bump, and then you tip in past where the crack is, Like I remember this story, I tell this all the time. I did one at Pahrump. Love Pahrump. Have you ridden Pahrump before?
I never actually have.
Oh, that track is so good. But the first time I did it, there's like this crazy double big swooper thing. It's awesome. Yeah. It's the first place you really, and the instructor was like, line up on the S on the casino billboard. And you're like, okay, worked great. Went there a year later. It wasn't a casino billboard anymore. It was like a blackjack billboard, right? Or whatever it was. It was like a storage wars.
Something else.
Yeah. And I'm like, the S is gone. You know what I mean? Like, what? Where's my reference point? And I don't want to teach that way.
Yeah. Well, that's good. With the track day, I thought it'd be kind of fun. So we had one session earlier this year, and this is our second track day for the year. I actually made some pretty significant changes to my bike.
You did. This is really interesting stuff sections. If we're into like geometry stuff.
And we've had several folks comment. They're very fascinated by the whole idea of how do you set up a bike and what changes do you make and why would you make them?
And to like be sensitive to what that change does, right? And you're good at this, right? Your engineering background, and you're more willing to experiment with some of these things than I am.
So I run the engine as low as it'll go. If you run the center of mass of the bike too low, you will have a bike that feels very, it can feel like it wants to turn, but it'll feel great in like a parking lot, but it won't feel great at speed.
Right. And Honda played with this during the 80s in the Freddie Spencer years, where they thought low mass is everything. And they put the gas tank down in the belly pan.
And the exhaust on the top.
Right. And so it was like a Weeblo for anybody who is our age. Weeblos wobble and they don't fall down. But the motorcycle was like that. All the weight was really at the bottom. And then to make matters worse, as the fuel load changed, it had a pretty
drastically.
It changed the whole bike behavior pretty. So, it was a failed experiment.
If you think about where you put the mass versus the kind of what do we call this? The roll axis,
right?
We'd call this.
Yeah.
If the weight is below the roll axis, it has a self uprighting effect.
Weeblos wobble, but they don't fall down.
So if you think about like if my roll axis is here, let's just say arbitrarily, but I have a higher mass
Describe
below.
it for our audio only.
Oh, good point. Imagine that my roll axis, let's just call it, is typically they're like 20 to 22 inches off the ground. That's very
where your
common.
Knees would be on the motorcycle.
Yeah, give
roughly.
or take. Yeah.
Okay.
If I put all of my weight below that,
like closer to your ankles.
Yeah, lower down below that roll center. If I lean over, then that weight, it's just like a counteract. It wants to lift the bike back vertically.
Oh, like the pendulum thing, like the bird that drinks out of the water. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, if I have my weight above that, then as I lean, it wants to fall further.
Gotcha.
Okay. So that's why we're trying to get the weight roughly in line with it. So that's why you're playing with the weight. Now, if you move the engine down and you run the suspension really low, right? So the whole chassis literally sits lower to the ground because you have a really short shock length and you run the forks slid up in the triple. So the whole front end's low.
So the whole bike is low to the ground.
So imagine like a dragster, right? A dragster has really low center of gravity. It will not wheelie very easily.
Or the GP bikes when they have the ride height and activated, where the bike's just slammed to the ground.
But if all the mass is well below that roll center, you're going to have this effect where when you lean into a corner, the bike wants to come right back up again because you've got all this weight tilting it back upright. Okay. So I run the engine in the lowest setting because then I can run the chassis a bit higher.
Oh, okay. All right. Gotcha.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
So my engine probably sits about where it should anyway, but I can run slightly taller suspension for other reasons. But then I get a good balance anyway. All right. You mentioned the squat, anti-squat.
Such an important number.
Let's get into this for just a little bit because squat and anti-squat is a difficult concept to explain when we don't have pretty graphics and diagrams.
Yeah, I'll simplify it to get everyone. It's just the angle of the swing arm, right? And pro squat or anti-squat is if the swing arm is angled down towards the wheel and up towards the engine. And that's to counteract when you roll on the throttle, the force of the chain rotating it wants to basically fold the swing arm up. So if your swing arm was level, when you rolled on the throttle, it would basically fold the swing arm up into the rear fender, right? And the back of the bike would just completely collapse. So a lot of motorcycles are trying to find that balancing point where it's really neutral, where you roll on the throttle, it's going to stay in relatively the same position. Because again, if it's too steep, right? If you roll on the throttle, it's going to do the opposite, and it's going to it's going to try to fold it the other direction.
Yeah. And this is very applicable. You can go experience this right now if you go out to your bike. Go to your bike, hold the front brake, and just start to ease the clutch out and tell me what the rear end of the bike does.
Right.
What you'll feel is you will feel the seat that you're sitting on, the whole subframe wants to raise up. It feels like the rear wheel and the subframe want to get away from each other, right? And that's the pull of the chain versus the angle that it's at. That's anti-squat.
And that's how most motorcycles are engineered to behave right now.
Pretty much.
There's still degrees of how much, right?
Now, things like changing the sprocket size or changing your swing arm pivot height or your shock length, all of these things can actually affect the amount of anti-squat you have.
Right. And this is why, again, lowering a motorcycle is opening a can of worms, right? Because you've completely changed that swing arm angle.
So what you're typically trying to find is a balance. Now, in my experience, and I've talked to other racers about this, the feeling that I will get is if I have, there's other factors to this. So hold your comments for a second, because for sure there's caveats to this. If I am leaned over in a corner, and as soon as I start to crack on the throttle, I'm just barely feeding in the throttle. If it feels like the rear end collapses and the bike squats backward and wants to run wide,
that's not what we want typically.
What's happening is I'm transferring that load to the rear because I'm accelerating and the weight wants to go to the rear tire. But the shock is either too soft or my anti-squat force is low enough, too low, that I'm blowing through that stroke too quickly. And the bike kind of becomes a chopper, right? The back end drops down really bad and it wants to run wide and it doesn't want to finish a corner.
Right.
Typically though, in those scenarios, unless you're way egregious on the one end, typically you get really good grip on the rear tire because all that weight transferred into the rear tire to squish it into the ground. Conversely, if I have too stiff of a shock, too stiff of compression damping, or too much anti-squat, when I first crack on the throttle leaned over, the rear will not load up because the weight doesn't want to transfer. The shock instead, or the swing arm instead wants to extend away.
Right.
And I'm actually breaking traction. So you'll get this sort of like snappy, squirmy slide.
Sketchy if you've ever experienced it. It's not fun.
And you feel like you can't get into the throttle until you pick the bike up more.
Mm-hmm.
And what typically it feels like to me is the bike will feel really choppy and harsh on the rear end.
My 848 was terrible at that.
Yeah.
It did that really bad.
And in my experience, that is typically I am not able to get enough transfer of load into the rear end in order to get it to squish the tire into the ground and give me grip. And that's the fine line of if it's blowing through the stroke and transferring weight too easily, the front will feel like it lifts up and I will run wide.
Right.
If it's too much, it'll just slide and squirm and it won't grip. I'll steer really, really good. It'll steer through the corner great.
It's sketchy. Like to my 848, like it was so extreme on my 848 that you could see it in the wear on the tire, that the edges of the tire would have virtually no wear. And then once I got to the lean angle where it stopped doing that, and I was confident to get back on the gas, I would burn my tire like 30% away up the sidewall.
Yeah.
Whereas as opposed to my RS34 now, I get a much smoother wear pattern up the side of the tire because it's so much more consistent, I will say, rolling on the throttle coming out of the corner.
Now, there's lots of things that can affect the outcome of this, right? So realize that the amount of squat and anti-squat is kind of a measurement of geometry, really. But the behavior that the rider feels, you can kind of compensate in a bunch of different ways. So for example, let's say you have a fixed swing arm pivot height and you cannot adjust it, which most bikes can't.
Most bikes are that way, right?
If you have that feeling where you get to the middle of a corner and you go to the throttle and the rear feels harsh and it doesn't feel like it digs in and loads, it feels very kind of sketchy.
Like it little slips.
Like you're kind of on the,
yeah,
it feels like you're just on the
surface.
It'll
just feel unnerving. It'll feel like your tire's worn.
If you're feeling that, oftentimes if you have a little bit less compression damping, or softer compression damping, I should say, so take a bit out, that will allow the rear to move through the stroke a little bit quicker, and it'll allow the weight to transfer and push that tire into the ground. That's probably the easiest one. And that's only if that's on the initial throttle application. That's really where the compression comes in. If you're midway through applying the throttle, if you've been on the throttle for half a second or a second or longer, and you now feel like you're really choppered out and squatting, you probably have not enough preload or too soft of a spring.
Right.
Because that compression really just affects how quickly it collapses. Once it's loaded, then it's the spring at that point.
Right.
Right.
Not to cut you off, but the black looming thing behind you, this was exactly something I was dealing with this.
Oh, yeah.
And thanks to Fuzzy and these conversations, I knew exactly what to do to make the thing behind you better.
I was having a problem in fast sweepers where I felt if I could go into a corner with pressure on the front end, right? So a typical corner where you're trail braking in, the bike would steer in, it would tip in, it would turn beautifully, get to the apex and drive off. Everything was great. But we have several corners on our track that are kind of long sweepers where you are steering on the throttle.
Right. Yeah.
So, we've got on our east track, there is turns 2 and 3 is
you're accelerating hard through those
even
turns.
On my bike, that's like a fourth gear pinned
Yeah.
sweeping, and you're accelerating all the way through. It felt to me like as I was driving through the corner, so all the weight's transferred to the rear because it's a long corner. So it's not like I'm skidding.
And you're coming
on the
out of like a
surface.
second gear, first gear, tight little turn one.
And you basically accelerate almost all the way through, even on 1,000.
Yeah,
I
which
might
is crazy, right?
I might touch the front brake a bit before I tip
To
in,
settle it
just
in.
to load the nose, and that's it. But as you're accelerating through this thing, all that weight pitches to the rear. It felt to me like I was really having to pull the bike and force the bike to keep steering as I was accelerating through. And I thought, man, I want to be able to keep a bit more weight on the nose so it'll keep steering more easily. It feels like I'm just fighting this thing. It wants to go wide the whole time. To your point, though, with that kind of wobble feeling, so you basically think about that corner. It's a long sweeping right-hander. I'm accelerating all the way through. And as I stand up to transition to a left-hander, suddenly I stand up and then I go to the brakes.
Right.
So I go from a front tire that has no load on it, that I'm fighting to steer through this thing, to all of a sudden stand up and then brake and load it.
So it's an abrupt input? Is that what's causing it?
It's either, it's partially if the input's too abrupt, but also if that front is not dead
it's not centered by the time I start.
Load it all of a sudden, it
Fascinating.
snaps straight.
Okay, cool.
Right? Because the trail is going to self-center.
Sure. Yeah.
Right? But if you're not quite there and you get a little wobble, it's all, just the pitch of the nose or under the nose. So I run a left-hand rear brake. Whenever I rode my wife's RX 660 at the end of the day yesterday to test something. She does not run a left-hand rear brake. That is my security blanket.
Seriously? Really?
When I get on a bike that doesn't have one and all I have is, because now I've sort of trained myself to not think about my right foot for a brake, right? Now when I'm riding along and all I kind of have is a front brake to think about, I feel sort of naked.
No kidding.
I feel very exposed.
Seriously?
Because if you think, so.
I mean, it makes we've all considered it. I'm sure all of us have considered putting a rear brake on a thumb brake on or something. Mm-hmm. I've considered it more than once, but I didn't know if it would be worth the effort, right?
Oh, I couldn't ride fast without it at this point.
Seriously.
It's like and not that I flat out couldn't, but like mentally I don't want to.
That it gives you just like enough of a little advantage here and there, settling down like the front end in that situation, right? Because that's a perfect situation where you could add a little bit of rear brake pressure early. It's going to settle, put a little bit more load, more gentle into that front, so you wouldn't get that little woogity.
Yeah.
Let us know if we do like a video on the main channel about putting a thumb brake on our track bike, on the Canyon Chaser track bike. Like that could be a fun video. Let us know if you'd be like, because it used to be really hard to do. It's a little easier to do now.
Easy now. It's so easy now.
Yeah. Let us know if you think that'd be cool. Because I think that'd be a fun video series.
I'll come back to the rear brake in a second. So that was the problem I was running into, is in these fast sweepers where you're on the throttle through and steering. Mm-hmm. It felt like the front was just vague. I just didn't have any load on the front end.
Sure, yeah.
So to counteract that, because I didn't want to change a bunch of suspension stuff, I didn't want to mess with the rear end. I liked the way it gripped. I just took the front forks and I slid them up in the triples. So I basically
lowered the front end.
Yeah, I lowered the front end. So the forks came
like
up
millimeter? No.
4 millimeters.
4 millimeters. Okay, that's a decent amount.
Enough that it should make a difference. And the idea, it's a fairly straightforward idea. All I'm trying to do is get a little bit more weight to sit on the front tire by keeping the front end down a bit more. I could maybe even go a little bit more and just experiment, because I typically would kind of want to go too far with an adjustment to know how far back to come. And 4 millimeters lower felt fine. I felt no consequence of it, no negative consequence, I should say.
But knowing you're going to push it a little further to see if it could be better, or did you just happen to land on the right number?
Yeah, so at the next one, I'll probably go another 4 millimeters.
Crazy. That's another line, right?
And just see what it does. If I don't like it, I'll come back. But
yeah, because I'm only one line on my front end.
Yeah, and I think there's 2 on my fork leg showing.
The same
forks. Yeah.
Yeah.
So now what would tell me, how would I know if it's too far, right? Typically, if the front end's too low, when you're braking into a corner, like trail braking into a corner, it would feel very like on the edge of tucking.
Like it's going to tuck, right? It wants to turn really easy, right?
So if you're braking and tipping in and the front feels like it feels almost to a point where it's vague, like at any moment it could just fold in on you. That's when you're kind of out of trail, basically. There's not enough to support you
that's what that's
anymore.
telling you.
I don't even know if that's mathematically what's happening, but that's how it feels to me. Is I feel like I've gotten to a point.
Now we don't have that caster self-centering one. It's now wanting to
you're kind of on the edge
pull
of
it back around sideways.
It could go either way almost.
Okay.
Right? And you're kind of on the edge of that feeling. Whereas if you had just a slightly taller front end, it'll want to stay straight. Right?
Interesting.
So if you get past that, then it feels like it'll fold in. I didn't have that feeling at all of the front end wanting to fold in on me on the brakes. And that would be kind of my telltale of, you went too far with it. The nose is now too low. You don't have enough trail or enough, height in the front end. Now you need to make it taller again and come back. So, because if you go to the extreme end of this, and that's probably the right way to think about bike setup, is think about whatever adjustment you're thinking about, take it to the extreme and then picture that. That's an easier way to think about things oftentimes.
Okay.
All right. So think about, if I wanted the most stable bike I could get in just straight line braking, what does that look like?
It's going to be a chopper. It's going to have a ton of trail, ton of rake.
It's a really low, it's a really low rear end. It's a really tall front end.
Yeah.
And as you brake, you're nowhere near kind of the limit of lifting the rear or of running out of trail, right? You got tons. So if you're going to make the fork a little taller, think about what would the extreme of a little taller be, and what's that going to do to me? Or what would that feel like? Same thing with going lower. So whatever adjustment you're contemplating, just go to the extreme of it and picture that, and you're going to get a bit of it, right? Hopefully that made some sense in a podcast form.
I think there's 2 points to what you just discussed. One is this is, again, the beauty of a track day, that you can kind of play with these things because you're going to see that same corner. I don't even know how many laps we did yesterday, but 50 times at least, right? So an opportunity to really learn and understand your motorcycle or motorcycle dynamics from that kind of perspective. But let me ask you this. What is this, this whole story of you adjusting swing arm length and playing with all these things? How can someone who is maybe a track day rider, who is playing with these things, how can they implement some of the information that you've just shared there?
Yeah.
What's the takeaway?
So I tried to convey the reason why I made these changes.
Oh, okay.
Right. Versus just, here's what I did. And that's what you should think about. So if you've been riding a while and you feel like you're riding consistently, you have to kind of do the basic level of things before I would even suggest you get into setup, right? Are you consistently able to hit all the points you want to on the track?
Yeah, you don't have a baseline yet, right? You don't have a control group. Your apex is your control group. If we're going back to our laboratory scientific thing, if you're not hitting your apexes, you have nothing to measure against.
So you have to at least be at a certain level of consistency to be able to even start to make a change and understand what that's going to do.
And here, I'm going to throw this out for the street rider too, that once you understand like these concepts and understand like what the motorcycle is telling you from a consistent environment, from that track environment, that when you take something like the hulking black thing behind you, that we'll talk about here in a second, you can problem solve so fast on a street thing. You're like, this is what's wrong. I know how to fix it right now. Because you probably know somebody, right? Who maybe you bought a new motorcycle and you take it to your buddy who is a good rider and you're like, something's not right. And they hop on it and they ride up and down the street and they're like, oh, this is wrong. They dink, 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 and they fix it. And you're like, holy crap, that's better. You fixed it.
Yep.
And you have no idea how they figured that out. This is how we get to the point of understanding that.
Yeah.
And you need that consistent environment. I love riding on the street more than I love riding on the track. I love riding on the track. But the track just makes the street riding exponentially better because I have more information, I have a broader understanding, better comprehension of what's going on. And I have, I know my skill set, right? So I never really feel like I'm anywhere near what I'm personally or the tires or the bike is personally capable of.
Yeah.
And if I am on the street near the limits of any of those things, I know enough to step down or back down from that, right? Because it's easy to be like, if I don't know where my limit is, I don't know where the bike or tires limits are, and I start riding on the street and I'm having a great time, and I'm not aware of how close to the edge I actually am, I don't know enough to step back.
Yeah.
Right?
So anyway, I think that gives you a little bit of an idea of some of the setup changes.
And should we talk about the black hulking thing that's been sitting behind you all episode?
Do you guys want to know about this thing?
I can't really tell you much. But what we can tell you is this is the giveaway bike. We finally have it in our possession. I can't reveal it just yet, but it's right here. I've spent the last 4 days riding this thing exclusively.
Yep.
I rode it on the track all day yesterday. I've taken it through whatever local canyon we have open. Took it to Cascade Springs Road is open now. Oh my gosh, I had a good time. Let me just say, and I don't want to oversell it, I am having so much freaking fun on this thing. It is better than I thought. I was so excited to find this thing. I'm so stoked about this motorcycle. It's all the things I really wanted for a giveaway bike. But what I didn't expect was how freaking fun it is to ride.
Yep.
Mrs. Canyon Chaser, we did a big shooting day the other day, and she was on the mule. She was on the Hyperstrada.
Yeah.
And I was like, baby, just take it. You got to go do some stuff so I can get some shots. And she gets off. She's like, I don't want to get off of this thing. She's like immediately I was going, we've done the same little stretch of road 6 times. And she's like, right off the bat, I'm going into all these corners 15 miles an hour faster. And I feel comfortable and I'm having so much fun. This thing is a humdinger.
So when Dave picked this up, when he told me what it was, first then he had to explain what that was. Because I didn't know what it was. It wasn't
something I was really aware of. It wasn't a bike I knew a whole lot about.
He brought it out to the track day. First time I'd seen it was at the track day, I think. It's a looker for one. And I'm not just building this thing up because it's the giveaway bike. I was genuinely surprised at how good looking it was.
It's really good looking. A couple people at the track, they're like, what is this? I'm like, oh, it's the giveaway bike. And one guy brought over his wife and he's like, we're going to enter so many times because you want this motorcycle. And she came and looked at it and she's like, no, I don't like it.
Oh, really? That's funny.
She's a cruiser. She's like, it doesn't have enough chrome on it. It's
well, fair enough.
But it was just so funny. It garnered a lot of excitement. There was a lot of people at our track day who were not really aware of this motorcycle. And I think you're missing out if you're not aware of this thing.
Of this one.
Yeah.
So what's so funny is when we did the first introduction of the idea of the giveaway bike, everyone was making suggestions of what to get.
There's some cool ideas.
This was none of them.
No, it didn't even come up. It wasn't even on the list. Didn't even yeah.
But I'm pretty excited about it. I think it's a cool bike.
Well, I fell into it. It was a really great deal. Yeah. I don't know who the previous owner was. It was used. Only has 3,000 miles on it. The previous owner did some really wonderful things to this bike. So I kind of hope the previous owner sees it and they're and they get to see us gloat on their very tasteful upgrades and well done adjustments they made to this bike. It's well sorted. I kind of thought I'd get a giveaway bike and I would fix some things. I don't know if there's anything to fix on it. I think he's already fixed it.
I kind of thought you we're going to end up buying kind of a project bike.
Yeah, I think we might try that for the winter. I might get on Iconic and find something that's a little bit more, this thing is so good. Part of me doesn't want to mess it up. You know what I mean? Like I'm excited. You should be excited too.
I think that's about as much detail as we can give you though.
Yeah, I know. Like I'm going to be editing the video all week. Sadly, there wasn't a video on the main channel last week because we were dealing with this and a couple other things that are coming that's really exciting. But I'll be editing this all week. So hopefully by the end of the week, we'll be able to reveal it.
Launch the giveaway.
And
then how long does it run for?
I don't know. I think it's only going to be 45 days.
So it's pretty short.
It's pretty short.
Okay.
Yeah. And I don't have any of the detail. I do have the details, but we got to wait till...
Yep.
Giveaways are kind of complicated. There's these legal things you got to kind of go through. We hired a really reputable company to handle this for us. If you're familiar with some of the other big motorcycle channels, they use the same company. It's very, very well reputable. It's super reputable. I was very careful about that. But they're going to handle all the legal aspects of it. And I have absolutely no say whatsoever on any level who wins. It's completely out of my hands. It goes, and that's all part of the legal stuff.
Right.
So it'll be completely fair. But I also, based on the research I did, the odds were going to be crazy in your favor. Like, the odds are going to be really good to win it.
This is not the lottery.
It's not the lottery. It's not like 1 in a million chance. It's going to be a bonkers, crazy good odds. I'm so excited. It's such a cool bike.
Well, I'm excited. Anything else this week?
No, I think that's pretty good. Unless do you guys have anything? Is there anything? Let us know in the comments. Please click like and subscribe if you're on Spotify. Please click follow. We're really close to being monetized on Spotify. That helps so much if we can get over that threshold. So yeah, comment, like, subscribe, all the things. It does help. It hopefully doesn't cost you much. And what does Dork in the Road always say that's really funny? Do you watch his YouTube channel? He's like, I'm like one of your best motorcycle buddies, only you can turn me off when you're tired of listening to us. That's like us. So like click like and subscribe. You can still turn us off when you're tired of hearing us.
Awesome. Have a good week, guys.
All right, guys. See you next week.